How much should you care about your average speed? Now, you'd be forgiven for not thinking about this ride metric because it can be impacted by so many different things, but you should think about it because it could really help your riding. Here's why. According to Strava, the average cyclist completes their rides with an average speed between 17 and 20 kilometers an hour. Now, of course, this average speed is impacted by lots of different factors. You've got to take into account the weather, your tyre choice, your tyre pressure, clothing, terrain, elevation gain. See behind me, which isn't looking too favourable. And that list could go on. But that being said, over the course of a number of different routes, perhaps local to you, you can build up a fairly accurate picture of what your average speed is across different terrains. And if you're tracking your rides, you build up a history so you can automatically delve into all those past rides and figure out what speed you've been riding at across those different terrains. So basically, even if you aren't concerned riding fast or far, paying attention to your average speed can really be of benefit. Route planning is the main area where this is the case. If you're planning a route on unfamiliar roads and you want to know how long it will take, or maybe you're taking on a set distance, you want to know what time it's going to take to complete that route, given your fitness level, understanding your average speed or a rough estimate of it is really key. For example, when you plot a route on Strava, your estimated time is based on your average speed from previously uploaded rides. And this same principle can be applied to any form of route planning. Riding 100 kilometers and want to know if you'll make it home before the Giro stage finishes? Well, understanding your average speed will help you do just that. Making sure you complete a route in a given time frame, you're not late, then there's not going to be any nasty surprises, and also you know you've packed enough snacks to get you through the time you're going to be riding for. As well as route planning, if you're riding in a group or about to ride with people who you haven't been riding with before, knowing a good estimate of the average speed they'll be aiming for can really help you understand if this is the correct group ride for you. Will they be riding too fast or too slow? And will you be riding with people at a similar level? This helps your enjoyment of the ride, making sure it is right for you and achievable without getting disheartened. And the same principle applies to any sort of event or Gran Fondo perhaps, which you might be entering. Knowing a good estimate of your average speed allows you to decide which group you should ride with, what sort of pace you should aim for, because often enough there's groups which will be riding at different paces and you can stick with them depending on your skill or fitness level. Now, the same principle also kind of applies to pro races, because an estimate of when you'll arrive at different points on the race routes is based on estimates of your average speed. So it's quite valuable to know this. If you're in an event or a long ride, you can start to plan in your stops, where you might be able to refuel, and what time of the day that might be. You can also use your mid-ride average speed as a way of accurately estimating how far you're still going to be riding for until you get to the finish. Remember, speed equals distance over time. Time equals distance divided by your average speed. How far have you got left to ride divided by your current average speed will give you a fairly good estimate of how long you're going to be riding for until you finish off your ride. These days, there are plenty of ways to track your fitness, be it with a heart rate strap or maybe a power meter. But tracking your average speed across lots of loops you often complete can also be a really simple way to track your fitness too. You could also be a bit more methodical with this approach and create some shorter local routes which you test yourself on every so often. Find out your time on these routes, your average speed on these routes, and then use that as a marker to peg yourself against to understand whether your fitness is improving or decreasing at various points throughout the year. You can even go a step further and really push yourself and also make these routes different so they're on different terrains, maybe a flat route, a hillier route, and therefore you can use your average speed on those different routes to then extrapolate from, take away from for when you ride in other areas, so you have a fairly good estimate of your average speed when you go further afield. To that end, it might also be worth completing those routes at different intensity levels. So at your usual endurance pace, maybe pushing as hard as you can, and also looking at those zone 2 or maybe sweet spot efforts where you're kind of pushing on just above conversation levels. That way you get a fairly good idea of your average speed, not just when you're riding as hard as you can, but also when you're riding easier and all those efforts in between, which really gives you a great estimate of your average speed and your ability to ride distances at different speeds, no matter where you may be. Average speed is also useful for addressing areas which you need to improve in. So for example, if you're struggling to hold a speed over set distances, or you're seeing your average speed drop off over the course of a ride, then that might be a sign you need to change things. There's a whole host of simple things you can do, and we've got loads of videos on the channel if you're looking for more information on how to quite easily improve your average speed. But it's things like tyre pressure, tyre choice, your position on the bike, your clothing choice. These are all things away from training and fitness levels which are going to allow you to ride faster. But getting that base average speed known, knowing those metrics and knowing your average speed across a number of different rides will allow you to build a fairly good picture and know if you need to change things to increase your speed on the bike. Of course, sometimes it pays to not pay any attention to your average speed. If you're just riding for the heck of it without any time limits and not worrying too much about how far or how fast you're going, there is something really freeing about just heading out the door on your bike and going with the wind. But for most of us, having that little bit of knowledge and an estimate of our average speed across different conditions can really help you out with your riding. So let me know in the comments if you use your average speed out in your ride, or if you even know what it is on your local loop. As always, if you did enjoy this video, please give it a big thumbs up. Thanks for watching. As always, we'll see you on the next one. Ride like the wind.